Hey guys, this time around we're going to be showing you how we're building our side plate jig. This jig is probably the most time-consuming project we've attempted thus far. And that's not to say that it was difficult, it's just that it's taking us a lot longer than we had anticipated. And maybe that's a good thing. With each new project we do, we learn that much more. And hopefully, for those of you that are following along with us, maybe you'll end up learning something as well. So we're glad that we get to show you these things. Throughout this video, I'm going to be switching back and forth between our regular microphone and the camera mic. We recorded some things while we're in the shop, so that's why you'll hear me cutting back and forth between the two. Okay, so the first thing we had to do was set the block of aluminum onto the milling machine so that we could face off the top, the bottom, and the sides. We're not really concerned with the front or the back because those surfaces really don't matter. They're not part of the jig. After all the facing was finished, we took the block back over to the workbench so that we could take the measurements we needed to draw all the holes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure out where each hole is going to go, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take it over to the milling machine and then drill every single hole that we need to, plus some additional holes for the clamping on the top. And you'll see what I mean when we're all finished. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to draw the holes first, and then we're going to cut about half an inch off of this block, and that top is going to be that top half inch is going to be the top for the jig. And then we're going to put the side plates inside the jig and put the top on. And basically this is how it's going to work. Put the top on, and then there's going to be a couple of holes drilled for clamping so that we can clamp the top down onto the jig. And then there's also going to be a hole drilled probably somewhere in the center for the side plates so that we can screw it in and clamp the side plates down to the bottom of the jig, and so that way they don't move. Otherwise, if you try to drill a bunch of holes without holding it straight, they would start to move on you, and you'd get a bunch of holes that were off center. So we definitely need to keep them held inside the jig. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure, and then once the measuring is done, we're going to take it over to the milling machine, and then we're going to cut. Now, in order to make the proper measurements, we used a digital compass. We got this compass from Amazon for about 30 bucks, and I really thought it was going to be a piece of junk, but it actually turned out to be pretty useful. The procedure was quite simple. We made sure that each measurement was correct by first verifying that the compass was calibrated correctly. Once we knew the compass worked right, we pinpointed certain points on the block that had already been scribed. And then we took a Sharpie and marked out a place we could swipe with the compass. Once we had the center points for each hole, we used the center punch to mark those points. We did this so that we could use those center points along with a coaxial indicator to get the exact center when we place the block back on the milling machine. After all the measurements were finished, we took the block back over to the milling machine so that we could drill out each hole to size. And it was a slow process because we had to keep stopping to clear out the chips, but, that's inevitable. The video doesn't show it, but we used a coaxial indicator to locate the first hole for drilling. And this is where the digital readout really comes in handy. We were able to verify that every hole that we measured was in fact in the correct position, and I don't think it could have worked out any better. I'm really in love with this digital readout. The only thing that's missing on this thing is the ability to add or subtract increments, and that's something that the more expensive version does have, and it's an upgrade that we'd like to make in the future, but for now, this one gets the job done. Okay, so we got all the measuring done, and we got all the drilling done, all the holes, and this is somewhat what the finished product will look like. What we've done is we drilled 2 half-inch big holes at the top, at the bottom here, and at the top. That's to make sure that the side plates not only fit against the back and the bottom of the jig and also the top, but so that when I start to mill it out, the milling bit doesn't go over, too far into the side of the jig. So just the precautionary measure. Okay, so all the holes have been drilled. These holes at the bottom are for the clamping, and so is this one right here. This hole right here is to keep the side plates down secured inside the jig. All the other holes are for the side plates, and you'll see what the side plates look like when they're all finished. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm also going to cut out, I don't know, you probably can't make this out on camera, but there's a little scribe line here and here, and I marked the ends of them with a marker. I might cut this big block out of the jig because it's really not needed, and I can use that big piece of aluminum for something else. The side plates only take up a little bit of this section, so I might use that for something else. Anyway, the next step is to either, I think I'm either going to cut this off first, or I'm going to cut the 1/2 inch off the top first. So let's get started on that. Okay, so as you can see, we opted to cut out the unnecessary section of aluminum first. We figured it might be easier to do it this way because of the way our bandsaw operates. But this turned out to be a bad idea, and you'll see why after the next cut. This particular cut went quite well, although it did take some time. Bandsaws take quite a bit of time to get through thick pieces like this, so, that's expected. You just have to be patient. The next cut took over an hour to finish, so that gives you an idea how long these things take. And it probably doesn't help that we're most likely not using a blade with the correct TPI. I'm sure there's some formula out there someplace, but, we only have 2 blade options right now, so we just went with what we had. Okay, the cutting for the sectioned out piece has been completed. Now I've got 2 pieces here. I can use this section of aluminum for another jig if I wanted to. So I've got these 3 pieces of aluminum for something else, for what I need to use them for. I have no idea, but they're there if I need them. I know I'm going to make this a jig or a couple jigs out of this piece of aluminum, so it's good that we cut it out of this, because that way we don't have to buy extra aluminum. Okay, well, as you can see, we're almost finished with this jig, except for cutting off a 1/2 inch off the top. Even if I want to go that deep, I'm still debating. It's either going to be a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. The bandsaw cuts pretty straight, so I may even go for a 1/4, although that's pretty thin. I might just stick with a 1/2 and see what we do. Other than that, I just need to mill out the bottom half, and that'll be it. I think we'll be finished. And that's coming up, so yeah, let's get started. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we had a couple of problems with this next cut. The first section of it wasn't that bad, but when we had to lift the guard up over the top section, that's when we started having issues. We ended up having to flip the entire piece over, which presented another problem. Not only did we have to hope that the 2 cuts meet in the middle, but we had to hold the block upright the entire time and make sure that the cut went straight. Flipping it over meant that it was just slightly unstable, so we had a rough time trying to make sure everything was in line. A little over an hour later, and we finally had our top section cut off. It really wasn't that bad, but we ended up having to remove more material off the 2 sections than we would have liked in order to fix the irregularities. Okay, so we finished the cutting on the bandsaw to cut the top half off. And as you can see, we've got the top half and then the bottom half. Overall, the cut went pretty well. There's only one spot right here where the blade got off track. I had to flip this over when I was cutting it because it wouldn't. It with this piece on the bandsaw was lowered, and it would have hit this section right here. So I had to raise it up, and that meant that this much of the bandsaw was actually cutting. So the longer the bandsaw is, the greater the chance for it to be off center or to start to cut a wavy line instead of a straight line. So yeah, we only had one problem, and it's easily rectified by putting it in the milling machine and facing this off. So all we have to do is face this off and then face this off, and then we're finished. And then mill out the bottom part, and that's it. We're finished. So let's take it over to the milling machine and face these off, and then let's get started on the milling. Alright, so we took the sections back over to the milling machine so that we could face off the material that we didn't need or that was uneven and not smooth. Facing just gives us a really nice, even surface to mate the two sections together. When we first set the block on the milling table, we used the half-inch clamping kit to secure it, but we realized halfway through the job that we had enough room to face these things with using just the vise. And we should have just used the vise in the beginning, but would have saved some time. Sometimes when you're dealing with large pieces like this, you don't always have enough room for the spindle to drop down to the work, so you have to use a clamping kit. But in this case, we had enough room. The face milling went pretty quickly, but we had some chatter with the thinner top section. When you have a thin piece like this, you're going to get some chatter unless there's enough room or enough support underneath. At first, we just set the top section in the vise and on top of two parallels and tried to do it that way, but we realized that we were going to need to have more support, so we stacked a few parallels underneath, and that got rid of most of the chatter. We still had just a tiny bit at the long end, but nothing excessive. And after all that, we noticed that we weren't sitting in the vise correctly, and what I mean by that is the side that was facing toward us was lower than the side facing away. And if we had left it that way, we would have ended up having a slanted cut. So we stopped, checked to make sure that the height was even on all sides from the top of the table to the workpiece, and then retightened the vise. I don't know why I'm going over all these little minor details, but maybe someone out there will learn something from our mistakes. Who knows? The larger section was a breeze, although we did have one minor issue. The bandsaw cut that was so wavy in places that we had to make several passes to smooth out the irregularities. We even tried to take more off it at one time than we probably should have, but it worked out in the end. Okay, so here it is after we've faced off the top and the bottom. So now we have two equal pieces, except for the depth. But we've got two equal pieces. So this is the top plate. As you can see, it's got all the necessary holes. And there's the bottom plate. Now, with the bottom plate, it isn't complete yet because it has to be milled out. It has to be milled out along there, along here, and along here. And all this has to be milled out. I wish there was some way we could save this big piece of aluminum that's inside, but I'm afraid it's a goner. Yeah, so all that's left is to mill out this section, and then we're finished with this side plate jig. Okay, so at this point we need to mill out all the excess aluminum from the bottom section. This is going to take quite a bit of time since we don't have CNC capabilities. The first thing we needed to do was make sure that the block was centered and absolutely parallel with the table. So we used a dial indicator and ran it across the front of the block to a few times to get it in line with the table. This isn't that difficult, it's just, time consuming. We could have performed this procedure on the vise instead, but I'm not so sure I trust this vise. It wasn't that expensive, and I'm starting to notice some defects with it, so it's better to align the workpiece instead. So after the work was aligned, we put a 1/2 inch end mill into the spindle just using a 1/2 inch collet. We do have a collet holder, but in this case it would have stuck down too far, so we opted to use just a collet for this. All that's left to do is to start milling, so we started off by milling out 10,000ths at a time, just to see how that looked. Once we knew it was okay, we tried a 15,000ths pass. And that worked out alright, so we bumped it up even further. I think we ended up going down about 40,000ths at a time at one point, and that seemed to go fairly smoothly. But it's definitely going to take quite a while to do, so I decided to make a decision. Okay, so I have made the decision that this video is going to be a two-parter, and there are a couple reasons for that. Number one, as you can see, I am not very far down with this milling operation. It's going to take me quite a while to get down to the depth that I need to get to. I need to go down 3 inches, and I've only gone down, I think, a little over 1/4 of an inch. I'm taking 50,000ths passes from now on, and that should speed up the process. I know I can probably go more than that, but I don't want to push the machine, and I don't want to push this this end mill. I need to save it. So, yeah. So this video is going to be a two-parter. I said a couple of reasons. I can only think of one. So, anyway, yeah, we'll continue this in the next video, and I will have a surprise in that video. It's probably going to be after Christmas. I said it was going to be for Christmas, and it's going to look like it's going to be after Christmas. So I'm sorry, guys, but I will have something to show in the next video. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so one last final edit here before we go. First, I want to say happy holidays to everyone. And second, I wanted to talk a little bit about the YouTube channel. You know, gaining subscriber was never really our goal for this channel. We just needed to have an outlet for us to show all of you what we're doing, and YouTube seemed to like an obvious choice. But I think we have about 40 subscribers now, and I think that's double what we had just a week or so ago. That's amazing. Not only are we happy to bring this stuff to you, but we're so excited that you guys are actually following along. We can't tell you how much that actually means to us. It isn't easy getting your name out there, but I think with all the new followers, our name will start to spread faster and faster as we bring you new videos. We just wanted to say thank you, and we hope that you guys are enjoying this as much as we are. We'll see you next time.